We're here with George Killebrew, the commissioner of Major League Rugby, heading into the 2021 season. George, we're 17 days out. A lot of announcements. The first schedule came out a little bit ago. We've got a lot of announcements since then. A lot of change. It's a lot of change continuously in this rapid, dynamic environment. I'm sure it's excitement, a little bit of relief, you probably a little bit of weary. What are you feeling heading into this season?
As of today, I feel great, but things change so quickly. The sad thing about shutting down last year after week 5 was that we had made a ton of progress. Like on every metrics that you measure a sports league by, we had increased. Our attendances had increased. Our 3 expansion teams had sold out their first home game. Our TV ratings were up. Our following on our OTT platforms were way up. So sailing into week 5 last year, I was feeling really great. And then of course, COVID hit and we had to shut things down. And, so it's the same exuberance I feel right now. The difference is, we've watched these sports go in front of us and handle COVID, and we've watched the NBA and NCAA football, and now we're watching NCAA basketball, which is a whole different subject because a lot of those teams are struggling. So, to me, we're fired up. 12 of our 13 teams are ready to compete, but we're really trying to follow these COVID protocols to make sure we can get 16 matches in from each of our teams.
So talk a little bit about December. We announced the schedule. Yeah, that's when it first came out. And obviously there was the announcement from the Jackals. So that would have thrown a spanner in the works last minute, because not only are you dealing with just scheduling teams, you're dealing with broadcast windows. How significant of a challenge was that at the last minute, and as a real testament to get to the point where we are today, 17 days away from starting?
Well, I knew it was coming. Like if you follow Major League Soccer, their 3 expansion teams all put off a year. St. Louis, Sacramento, they were all supposed to play and they all delayed 1 year. So this isn't the right environment to launch a team necessarily. So of our 2 teams, LA decided to push forward. Dallas said, we're going to wait a year to launch, which was from a business perspective, the right decision. So we were early enough along that we hadn't made any plans that we couldn't unravel. If you remember the year before, we had a problem child in Austin and we were able to solve that. That was a much later problem than this was. So really the Dallas, delay to launch their inaugural season to 2022 was not a curveball at all. Something we kind of knew was coming and kind of thought it was the right decision all the way around.
On the other side of that coin, Dallas ramping down, LA ramped way up, and going to be in the LA Coliseum, a massive venue. Just doing the math, you can only have 5% or whatever percent of attendance.
20,000?
Yeah, so we could still get a pretty good crowd in the Coliseum, right? What are your thoughts on the LA Coliseum and that venue and that platform for Major League Rugby?
Well, it's an iconic venue. It's obviously a lot bigger than we typically play in, which, once you get to know the owner of the Giltinis, you'll understand he thinks big. That's just who he is. And he's a wonderful owner, probably has the best marketing mind of anyone in our ownership group. He thinks really big. So, the first thing they did right was they went to Maui for 30 days and had their training camp. Like,
yes.
Who doesn't want to play for the Giltinis? Like if I was a player, I'd be like, hey, I'd like to go with these guys because I want to spend 30 days in paradise. But so we'll see. Obviously, California of all of our states is the most closed of our states that we're in. So unlike Texas, which as of yesterday, our governor declared we're 100% open for business, which doesn't mean necessarily that our Texas teams are going to open their facilities to 100% capacity. But we are much more open in the center of the country with our Texas teams and Louisiana than we are on the coasts. So, hopefully as time goes on, these venues will be able to open up, and I'd love to see what a sold out LA Coliseum looks like for a rugby match. That'd be a proud day for Major League Rugby.
Wouldn't it be amazing?
Have you tasted a Giltini yet?
I'm not even sure what it is. I was just joking with I just did an interview with the guys in Maui the Maui News, and I said, maybe we should get a team in Maui. We'll call them the Gil Mai Tais. We might as well, there was a rumor they were going to buy a Texas team and we'd have the Gil Margaritas or what have you. But
yeah,
I have not. I have known that owner though way before I met anyone else in Major League Rugby, because Adam Gilchrist owns F45, which is a chain of gyms. And when they launched in the US, They launched in Los Angeles and in Dallas, and they used, when I was at the Mavericks, they used us as kind of their launch partner. So I've known Gilchrist and the F-45 guys for probably 4 or 5 years now, and they're quite a success story, by the way.
Another success story, American Airlines, a big sponsorship getting over the lines. I mean, you coming in as a commissioner, that's a big task, is bringing revenue to the league, and that sponsorship is one of your top line revenue generators. Just talk about that sponsorship and what it means for you guys to get one heading into the season.
Well, first of all, I've had a 30-year relationship with those guys. We had the American Airlines Center in Dallas. We did that naming rights deal where the Dallas Mavericks and the Dallas Stars play. And so, I think we understood their DNA a little bit and what they look for. And, and really the credit goes on that deal to our chief commercial officer. It's a guy named Mark Yates that I hired from Fox Sports to come over and join Major League Rugby. And he had a relationship there. I've had a long relationship there. And those are the type of brands that we want to add to our roster. And to be honest with you, we're very self-aware of where we are today. So we're not out there saying, geez, in order to get involved, you need to write a 7-figure check and things like that. We're looking for brands that want to be involved with us, that are willing to grow with us. And American was a great partner. Not only do we have a need for their services because our teams, have to fly. We don't charter in this league yet. We fly commercially. So, having one partner that can go everywhere, including Canada, by the way, which not all airlines can do, was important. And so, there were 4 or 5 different tentacles to that deal that made a lot of sense for us. And that's one of many. Be able to do some of these under the COVID kind of black cloud is really significant because we have done really, really well this year, all things considered, in that area. And if COVID wasn't here, I shudder to think what we'd be doing.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about this time during COVID last year where we weren't able to play. There's been a lot of work that's been done on the youth side and as well as the academy side. It's been a real success from what I understand, what you guys have been able to achieve having this time off.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the 2 silver linings from shutting the season down after week 5, the first was that our Board of Governors voted to pay all the players their full salaries as if we played all the way through to the finals, which was really significant because, there was another professional league that folded, or decided to stop playing the same time we did, and they jettisoned their players in 24 hours and there was no severance. For us to decide to pay all of our players their full salaries was very significant. And for our international players that went home, they went home and they told all their mates how well they were treated by Major League Rugby. So there's the halo effect of that. And then just about all of them, we have 500 players and, we are single entities, so they all work for the league. I technically sign their paychecks. They all reached out to me through different forums, through social media and whatever, and said, thanks. They said, that was really cool. Thank you for doing that. And we can't wait to come back next year. And we're willing to do anything to help you kind of market and publicize this league. So that was very significant. The second was using the year off, basically the 12 months that we had to build our businesses and really work on the fundamentals of sports marketing, which are ticket sales, sponsorship sales, marketing, community relations, broadcast, and then most importantly, the youth rugby aspect. So, we'll take the team that I'm staring at behind you. We'll take New Orleans. They did a video that they sent out to 200 high school coaches around the state of Louisiana, football coaches, and said, listen, lend us your players in the offseason and we'll do 3 things for you. 1, we'll keep them in shape. 2, we're going to teach them better tackling techniques. We're going to teach them how to get the neck and the head out of the way. And then we're going to teach them to move laterally better because football, as you know, is a very north and south game. And every team has that kind of story, right? They were able to use the time to grow youth programs, academy programs, and really ramp up that aspect of our business. Now, it's the most important aspect of our business. We're behind there. We're behind, we'll say, where soccer was when it first came and MLS was launched in this country. We need hundreds of thousands of kids in each of our cities playing the sport. Because what that means is that our coaches and our players are in their communities teaching these kids the game during the week. And then on the quid pro quo on the weekends is that all the kids and all their families and all their friends come to our matches. And then we're sold out, right? Then we are filling venues like the LA Coliseum or coming close to it. So
that model is a model that maybe, I don't know that you learned from, but you definitely familiarize yourself with when you were with the major, working on arena soccer with the Dallas Sidekicks. You got to get the stars, Tattoo, who's playing for the Sidekicks and starring in the arena. You got to get them out in the pitches and in the community coaching. And then there's no way that the kids that he coaches aren't going to buy tickets and hot dogs on the weekend. I've heard you talk about that model. What people may or may not know about arena soccer is it had a really sharp trajectory upward in the late 70s and 80s. And in several cities, The Last Dance that was made popular this summer, the Chicago Sting would outdraw the Chicago Bulls. Here where we live in Kansas City, the Kings were struggling with the Comets, and the Comets helped drive the Kings to Sacramento and out of town. So, what were the lessons? I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I think people don't understand how big arena soccer got, but then it did, it had a real, backslide after that. What were the lessons of success or failure that could be learned? Because I imagine you would take the front end of their trajectory, but you'd try to find a way to avoid the back end.
Yeah, no, it's, when I was recruited for this job from the search firm, the 5 owners that interviewed all the commissioner candidates, they wanted to talk about my 25 years at the Dallas Mavericks. And I wanted to talk about my 5 years at the Dallas Sidekicks, because really, the marketing of indoor soccer is much more on the profile that we are in Major League Rugby today. So it was that, when we started the Dallas Sidekicks, we had 100,000 kids registered playing soccer in North Texas. Wow. So all you had to do over a 28 match season, 14 home, 14 away, was to get one kid to bring one parent to one game, and you're sold out all year long. Right. So it's back to that grassroots work of having all of our players and all of our coaches out there in the community teaching the game. And then the quid pro quo on Saturday was everybody loads up the minivans and they come and they're the first 5 to 10,000 through the turnstiles, for the professional team. So, you're exactly right. We don't have enough time really to get into the history of indoor soccer, but it was this close to being successful and really taking the next step, because in the last league that we were in, most of the owners were NBA owners, NBA and NHL owners, whose arenas were empty in the summer. And so we had the LA Lakers and the Dallas Mavericks and the Sacramento Kings and the Washington Wizards all having indoor soccer teams as a way to really fill 14 dates in the summer. So, having that quality of ownership group, that's where it was that close. And a lot of great sports marketing veterans have come out of that. The famous Lewicki brothers, that have gone on to great things in the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL now, all started in indoor soccer. Tim Harris, who's president of the LA Lakers, started at the LA Lasers, and you can go all the way down the line. But it's a great product, as you know, from your years in Kansas City. But those lessons learned about grassroots marketing and the importance of the youth piece, really comes from my background there.
You talk about the ownership, and not quite the same level of, the owner of the NBA team in town owns the soccer team in town. But we got Patrick Chung and Nate Ebner now. We've got a couple of Patriots involved in the ownership group there in New England. When the Jackals kick off, they'll have, of course, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks as their kind of celebrity owner. Here where we live, Patrick Mahomes has bought into the Royals. His girlfriend and fiance has bought the NWSL team. I've got to imagine that there's some opportunity here. You see Jason Sudeikis and all sorts of sort of celebrities buying into Premier League overseas. Is this something that, you get a name brand that can tweet and use their social media platform to drive rugby's awareness? How big of a part of your recruitment plan is it, your expansion plan, to kind of go after these types of people?
We're shooting way higher than those examples. We want Prince Harry.
Yeah, why not?
Absolutely.
Why not?
Yeah.
Prince Harry, Kansas City is gorgeous in the fall. It's gorgeous in the summer. It's gorgeous in the spring.
It's the London of the Midwest.
It's the London of the Midwest.
I'm going to go another way with that. I want a second team in LA, and I want Prince Harry to own it.
There we go.
There you go.
There you go. That's even better. Okay, fine. Deal.
But you're hitting on a real topic. There are a lot of people that love rugby, that are famous, that are now in this country, that we need to bring into the family. What the Free Jacks did with Patrick Chung and Nate Ebner was brilliant, right? Get guys with that kind of high profile nature. they ended up going on Barstool and talking about it. That's what you want. So, we're going to obviously kind of chase that down as best we can as we find people that have some semi-celebrity status or full-blown celebrity status that want to get involved in us. So that's one. Two is, some of these players, we'll take Chris Robshaw, for example, that's kind of played at the highest level, captained his country, in World Cup. And, he's got, 600,000 followers amongst his social platforms. So the quid pro quo, as he comes over here and plays for the San Diego Legion, is, hey, this is great, Chris, but part of the deal is we want access to your followers. We want you to tweet and put on Instagram. If you look at Robshaw in particular, he's already done that.
Yeah.
You see him training in Las Vegas in his Legion gear. Like we can't afford that kind of advertising, right? If you had to go out and buy it. So we have to lean on the assets we have. So whether it's players that have celebrity and big followings, whether it's true celebrity that have celebrity and big followings, or it's royalty that has big followings, we'll take them all, right? Because that'll help raise the profile here.
And if there's ever any questions, you can tell them it's 'cause I like them. In our game, we play with our hearts. We don't play with sticks, bats, or gloves. We don't wear shoulder pads or helmets. We keep playing when it hurts. And we leave everything on the field. What we wear must be built for our game.
So let's talk a little bit about your background and when's the first time you'd obviously heard of rugby, but when's the first time you were given the hard sell on rugby as a sport?
Well, I'm not even sure I can tell my first rugby story publicly.
Okay.
It was involved the Dallas team, the Harlequins, and literally they played right up the street from where I went to college. And really the only reason I went were for kind of the people that attended and maybe some beer drinking that was going on. I had no interest in the game. I was just going because pretty girls went and there was a lot of beer to be had. But then I worked for a guy named Mark Hewen. I worked with Mark for 20 years. Mark's first love was rugby. So Mark played rugby at Indiana University. He's a big fan of their team. I believe he's endowed that program, which, the university itself is like, well, how about a little, cash coming our way for the university? Why does it have to be about rugby? And I've listened to his rugby stories ad nauseum for 20 years. Met all the guys he played with that would come to Mavs games. And so, he was probably the one that kind of really indoctrinated me into the game a little bit. And then when, through a guy we both know who's a headhunter that was doing the search for Major League Rugby, he called Mark and said, hey, we're looking for a commissioner. And Mark called me and said, you may want to think about this. And then Donnie Nelson, of course, who's president of the basketball operations there, who owned the Dallas team, kind of got me into the fray there. So that's how kind of, now you fast forward 15 months, which is hard to believe, but that's kind of how it went down.
I got to imagine, did he get better in his rugby stories year after year as time went on?
According to him, he was like the Michael Jordan of rugby. Now, there is zero footage of this. There is zero written or oral history saying how good he was, but he actually went on Barstool as well, and they started talking rugby. And he made the statement. First of all, he was very kind to Major League Rugby. He talked about MLR. He talked about me being the commissioner. Then he said something to the effect of, the problem with the game is I'm the most famous American that played rugby, in the U.S. Like, I'm like, that's not the case. There's other guys. Like, let's remember George Bush played rugby. Remember that, Bill Clinton played rugby and everything.
Chris Farley. Yeah, good Marley.
Yeah, according to Mark, man, he was something. But it's funny. He wears Indiana's rugby gear a lot. Now, he doesn't wear it to Mavs games, but he went to a G League game that was on TV, and there he is wearing the Indiana University rugby shirts. Then he went back to a game at Indiana, a basketball game that was a tribute to Bobby Knight, and it was on national television. He's wearing again his Indiana rugby shirt, so he loves the game. He sends me emails all the time asking questions about expansion and things like that. He's been a really good friend as well, because as we were going through some of the early stuff with COVID, I was able to kind of through him and through the Mavs kind of understand the protocols of the NBA kind of in real time. So I was getting real-time information on a Big Four league and how they were dealing with things. And, I think Mark would like nothing better for us to host a Rugby World Cup, in North America at some point. And I imagine he and some others will be right at the front of that. And, he's quietly given money, to the U.S. women's program recently. In the past, he's given money to the U.S. men's program. So, he's a fan for sure.
There's a quote out there, and I can't find it, but it's been attributed to him that say that if he would donate $10 million to USA Rugby if he could pick their board, and I'd just say I think they'd take that deal right now. So you might just let him know that that deal could be had.
It's interesting. He said to me, the first thing you have to do is have a really close relationship with USA Rugby, because they're struggling and, financially and things like that, which we do. I talk to the president of USA Rugby once a week, for an hour. We have a standing call. We're sanctioned by USA Rugby. We have a sanctioning agreement with USA Rugby. But the board makeup there is really more about the youth and the academy, and it's really volunteers and things. And I think as we get closer to World Cup, if we're going to get really serious about it, we're going to have to put a different type of board together of people. And if it's not George Bush, it's George Bush's guy or girl. Yeah. And if it's not Bill Clinton, it's Bill Clinton's guy or girl. If it's not Mark Cuban, it's Mark Cuban's guy or girl. And that list goes on deep. I mean, the president of Bank of America did an article or interview recently. I'm sure you guys read it. And he really attested all of his success in business to what he learned as a rugby player. So I think as we get closer to something as major as that, we will elevate those types of people in kind of a sub-board, if you will. And really, I think you'll see people come out of the woodwork like never before, right?
And we just got to get Dave Portnoy to share some of that Barstool money with PFT commentators so he's got enough money to buy into the league.
There you go.
Well, if you follow him, you've seen all their stuff with the National Women's Hockey League. And, so one of our owners in Dallas is also involved in that. He's the president of the Texas Rangers. So he's the other side of the Dallas contingency. And he's very involved in the National Women's Hockey League as well. So, I don't know, I'm never say never, right? But we'll take, that's what we need, guys. We need people with celebrity and a loud voice that can help us grow this league, through their kind of celebrity-esque, if you will. And, we're all over that. We're welcome to it. New England has done a great job. In other ways, like Old Glory partnered with the Scottish Rugby Union. So it doesn't necessarily always have to be celebrity. It could also be people that bring great IP to the table and share best practices between the two, like Old Glory and the Scottish Rugby Union do.
So talking about celebrities, it's a question everybody wants to know. You've been around a lot of basketball players in your time. Now, as a rugby coach, and you coach as well, we always love getting a basketball player to play rugby because they can process things quickly. They're thinking about the next move. They're physical. 3 players in your time in the basketball world that you want to have on your rugby team.
I think at the top of the ones that I'm friends with would be Steve Nash. He's just crafty, and he's, Steve Nash and Jason Kidd are probably in that answer there, just from a craftiness and ability to control pace and things like that. From a sheer entertainment standpoint, it's no doubt that it's Dirk Nowitzki. No doubt. I'd love to see a 7-footer. He goes over and plays soccer in Germany and always ends up on, and it's the goofiest thing you've ever seen in your life. It's just, here's this 7-footer, trying to dribble a soccer ball and stuff. And, you can imagine, having Dirk in a line out or something like that. So
he wouldn't have to jump.
I'll go with those 3.
How about from the commissioner's perspective? Is there an owner or a coach? I mean, there's some pretty, the one that you worked for, Mr. Cuban, is quite a colorful. It seems like maybe we have our Mark Cuban of MLR and Adam Gilchrist. I don't know. But is there a coach or a personality that you would that we could use in the sport of rugby from the world of basketball?
Oh, that's a really good one as well. That's I gotta have to think about that one. You guys are throwing the curveballs at me today. Like most everyone else wants to talk about, state of the league, but I'd have to think about that. I think, oh man, you look at some of the great tacticians, because I think rugby is really a tactician type of sport. You look at a Belichick, right? And just the cream of the cream of the football mind, and I think someone like him, someone closer to home, on the basketball side would be Don Nelson Sr., Big Nelly that, he was the first to play small ball, and he just did really unconventional things. And he won 1,000 games. He's only one of 3 or 4 coaches in the history of the league, in the NBA, that have won over 1,000 games. And he did that with non-traditional matchups. He never had the most talented teams ever, but he found ways to succeed because of matchups. He exploited matchups. So I don't know. I think those two, I've always been intrigued by Bill Belichick just because he just gives you nothing. He just looks like this kind of curmudgeon character, but you just know that the wheels are spinning, and he's a brilliant football mind.
University and college rugby teams. Save 50% on your next custom Rhino Rugby team kit order with a sponsorship from Penn Mutual. Your design, your logos, your colors. Includes jerseys, shorts, and socks. Save 50% on your next custom Rhino Rugby team kit order with a sponsorship from Penn Mutual. Learn more at rhinorugby.com.
Live free with CBD. Grown here in America's heartland, the land we love. Made by our neighbors in communities like yours. Brought to you by people like you. From the seed to the shelf, you can trust us. Live free with American Shaman CBD.
Talking about the league and the season that's coming up, are there any metrics? I mean, I think we knew kind of last year we need to see some sponsorship tick up. We need to see some broadcast tick up. We need to see some ticket sales tick up. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, those were all kind of on the rise. Obviously, I would imagine those are your priorities. You've got KPIs along all those that you want to hit. Is there anything else that's, now with time that you've seen that you want to see? What's the measure of success for you, George Killebrew, the commissioner, for this upcoming season?
I would say besides the traditional KPIs, which every sports team is judged by, which are how many tickets did you sell? How much sponsorship revenue did you get? How's your broadcast agreement? I think the biggest change that I want to see this year that we've been working on is really the qualitative experience of the match itself. So, we do a pretty decent job in our cities of getting the rugby faithful to attend or to watch. But in order to succeed and to really grow, is we have to bring more people to our matches. And not necessarily people that are there as hardcore rugby fans, which means the game entertainment, the music, having things for the kids, bounce houses and face painting and balloon animals, and just the pageantry that goes around the North American sports experience for the fan. We have to bring that to rugby, and we were not doing a very good job of that. It's got to be something whereas, is the family of 4 sitting around the dinner table on a Wednesday talking about what do you want to do Saturday night? We need to be the answer to that question. In order to be the answer to that question, we have to have something for everyone. So yes, the core product is rugby. And by the way, we don't have any competition in that space, where there's only one professional rugby league in North America, and that is us. So we can check that box. We're not losing fans to other professional rugby organizations in the US and in Canada. So now it's about everything else that goes around it. Great tasting concession items, entertaining mascots, a fun halftime, the use of music and video in our facilities, all the things that the traditional NBA team does or the traditional NFL team does, we've got to bring to this sport. Because what I found in my limited abilities to go to matches last year was there's one just light bulb moment for me. I was looking at this crowd at a city, and they all look the same. First of all, for a sport that is as diverse as this sport is, we were not reaching those different abilities to bring in those demographics. And, the crowd looked very much the same to me. And I sat next to this gentleman who was by himself. And I asked him, I said, kind of in a nice way, like, where's your posse? Or did your wife go to the ladies' room, or your kids over at the Bounty House? And he said, no. He goes, I come to these matches by myself. I buy a season ticket, a single season ticket, really just because, I love rugby. I played it in college, but my family there's nothing for them. They don't care for it. That's a really aha moment, right? Because that's on us, because we don't have, the things that made his wife or made anyone else in his family wanting to come to our matches. And that's a problem. So we have to have something for everyone. And we're working on that, right? So a lot of our teams, are picking up the ball on the youth side. We got to have, if kids come to our games, first of all, they got to get an autograph. This is just indoor soccer 101. This is all the stuff we did. They got to be able to get an autograph. They got to be able to come on the field. They got to touch and feel the players and the equipment. They got to learn how to pass the ball, right? So it's like, and they got to, if they're bored or whatever, and they're just not into it, they got to go jump in a bounce house or get their face painted or whatever. We need mascots to entertain. I mean, this isn't rocket science. This is sports marketing 101. And we have to do a better job with that. Our team in Austin, who, was at the bottom of our roster last year as far as franchises. We rank all our franchises in all the metrics, 1 through 13, from ticket sales to sponsorship to social media following to whatever it is that is measurable. We rank them 1 to 13, and then we post it to them each month so they know where they stand. So if you're a bottom third team, here's how you're going to get to the middle third and eventually to the upper third. Austin was a bottom third team in all metrics. They just did a partnership with the Austin Music Foundation, so they will have different bands live at every game.
Paul Oakenfeld. Yep, Paul Oakenfeld.
There you go. So it's these types of things that are outside of the core product, that we learned very early on at the Mavericks. Like you don't know when you're going to win and when you're going to lose. And by the way, we were losing bad, and nobody's showing up because they want to watch a losing basketball team. And we realized right off the bat, we're not in the basketball business. We're in the entertainment business. And that's what these teams are now. The light bulb is really starting to go off that, yes, we want the hardcore rugby fans. We want the rugby to be the best quality it can be. But if we're going to survive and thrive and grow, we have got to attract a wider demographic. And there is no excuse, because this sport, I'm staring at New Orleans again. I'm stuck on it because you got the jersey behind you. But I said to them when I first met them, they have players from New Zealand and Australia. And we were talking about this Argentinian player in per se. In every city, you have that demographic. In New Orleans, Louisiana, there are people from Australia. There are people from New Zealand. There are people from Argentina. There are people from England. There are people from Ireland. Well, here is the perfect sport to let that group rally around them, right? That group in that city actually has something they can identify with in a sport that they can identify with. We were talking about this Argentinian player, and the owner of New Orleans looks at me and goes, I know the owner of the biggest Argentinian restaurant in New Orleans in the French Quarter. I said, here's how this is going to go. Our player is now going to go to that restaurant and eat all his meals for free, by the way. And then he's going to get to know this whole Argentinian community in New Orleans that comes with this restaurant as the center point. And now there's a relationship. And the quid pro quo is when he goes and plays on Saturday, that whole demographic is going to follow with him. And we're also going to fly the Argentinian flag at the stadium.
Right.
So this sport has this ability and this advantage over other sports. Not to mention LGBTQ, how that is a big part of rugby. Are we reaching out to all these demographics in all these cities and bringing them in, inviting them in? And we're not doing it to the extent we should. And I think that's starting to resonate. So now there is something for everyone. I'm I'm admonishing these teams to please fly the flag of every player on your roster that's not from the United States. Please fly their flag, because it's a tent pole, right? It's what a better symbol for that community in that city to attend that match, because there is something for them. There is a player from their country playing on that team. So we need to take advantage of all of our demographics. We have to welcome them in. Then we have to have something for all of them, so that they go away having a good time and want to come back. And if I hear one more time, I come to these matches by myself because whoever it is, my significant other, my kids, or what have you, don't want to come because there's nothing for them, then we're blowing it. We're blowing it, because if you take that example and that dad that I was talking to, the wife and the 2 kids come, we're sold out. There is no more room. Our attendance quadruples by that story, right? So it's just hugely important. And that's the thing. That's a long-winded answer to that question, by the way. That's the thing I'm most excited about is these guys really kind of the light bulb going off and saying, we're in the entertainment business. We're not in the rugby business. We're not in the rugby business. And when we put something on national television, on FS1 or FS2 or on CBS Sports, it's got to look good. Those stands have got to be full. We did a game last year from San Diego. I was not at the match. I was watching on my TV, and I looked at it and I said, you know what? I want to attend that event. It was a beautiful day in Southern California. The stadium was full of people. They were drinking beer and having a good time. The quality of rugby was outstanding. That's what it's about, right? And I watched that telecast and said, I want to attend that event. I watched another one from another city that I will not call out, and it looked miserable. There was not enough people in the stands. Of course, it was a dreary day. It was a driving rainstorm, and I'm just shaking my head going, I just don't want to be there. So these days, because high definition television is so great, you have to make the in-venue experience exceptional. If it's not exceptional, you're going to stay home. Even if you love the game, you will watch it in high definition. 10 years ago, those TVs were $10,000. Not anymore. They're $400, right? You can get a big 60-inch, great high definition television and watch your rugby at home. If we do not turn these into events where you look at it and go, if I don't go there, I'm missing out on something. And then from a segmented marketing standpoint, my demographic, wherever I'm from in the world, this is what we do. All of the Irishmen meet in this pub and we all go to support Rooney to watch fill in the blank player who's from there.
You mentioned, I think you guys have a unique kind of dynamic, right? It's all about, you got to get tickets, you got to get people through the turnstiles. That's how you're going to make your money. But you also have a tremendous amount of attention being paid to the MLR across overseas. And it's hard to perhaps capture and monetize how excited people in South Africa are about what's going on here or what they're doing in New Zealand or in the UK. And so, a lot of Chris Robshaw's 600,000 Twitter followers are overseas. How do you convert that? That seems like a unique challenge that maybe you didn't have in the NBA or in some of your previous places. So what are the ways to kind of convert them into MLR fans and not just fans, but into sales and dollars for your teams?
I think, the first thing is we'll do 35 games nationally on those 3 outlets that I talked about. More importantly, on OTT, we have been a customer on different OTT platforms since this league began. And we're going to make an announcement here coming up, hopefully this next week, where we're going to kind of take that piece and try to own it ourselves. So instead of being maybe a less demanded type of product on, we'll say, an ESPN OTT platform, let's have our own. Let's control our destiny. Let's make sure fans, that aren't in the United States or in Canada can follow us. And so we're really excited about this. We're on the 5-yard line. And it's important for a lot of reasons, a lot of the ones you just outlined. But it's something, and the biggest thing that comes from it is data and knowing who our fans are, and then having the ability to market to that demographic. When you're a customer at somebody else's, if you're a renter, of space, you don't get the benefit of that. When you're the owner of the space, you get the benefit of it. So stay tuned. You'll be learning.
No teasers today. This won't air till after that probably announcement gets made. So you're more than, we'll take any teasers we can get.
We're not there yet. We're still negotiating with the group. So I don't want to do anything to spoil it, but it's a watershed moment for our league. And, these things aren't it's very inexpensive if you rent, just like in anything else in the world. It's expensive if you own. So, I give again credit to our owners who realize that this is where it's going. The OTT platforms and the way, a lot of demographics consume what they want in sports these days. It's not the same as it used to be. They're not parked on their living room couch for 2.5 hours watching. The world has changed. And so we need to speak to that demographic. I'll tell you, we also use the off time because no one really knew who our demographic is. There's a lot of people that had opinions of who we should market to, but there was no data. And we did a very in-depth study with Octagon about our fan base and where's our potential for new fans. Because I mentioned to you earlier, if we don't, really solidify this new fans, we're kind of kidding ourselves, right? We need that base. And so what we learned from it was very interesting. And you'll appreciate it a bit with your soccer background, not necessarily indoor, but it's like when MLS first came here, there was a large swath of the population that wanted to identify with that, mostly because they could own it. And they didn't want to follow the beaten path of just being a fan of what XYZ league, the big three, what have you. They want to kind of blaze their own trail. And that's what the MLS kind of did. They got people involved and those fan groups that the first
hipster fandom is what I refer to it as. They got the hipsters out and gave them a scarf to wear and a team to cheer for.
Well, that opportunity is ripe for rugby through our research. Same type of data came through saying there's a big intrigue about the sport. They don't necessarily understand it to the effect that they need to, but they want to own something. They don't want to rent. They don't want to be following, the herd mentality. They want to go the other way. And so we have that opportunity to wrangle them in and let them be the trailblazers. I mean, MLS just turned 25 and we're 3 years old, right? We're learning to walk and crawl and hopefully trot and run here pretty soon, but they're 25 years old and their franchises are now selling for $250 million to get in, with another $250 million for a new stadium. So if you want to be in that game now, you're in at $500 million before you play a match. Like our value proposition is a lot more affordable and our entry is a lot more doable at the numbers we're talking about, but it's the same mentality, and a couple of teams have done it well, and in Seattle, they got their guys, San Diego's got their guys, but that's got to go on steroids. The first thing I did was I wrote a letter to all those fan groups and they were like blown away. They're like, because they kind of think it's a big deal. Like if you have the title commissioner, like we all know it's not that big a deal, but and they called me, they're like, I cannot believe the commissioner in the league is writing me, the guy that, is in the fan group that dresses up crazy at the San Diego Legion games. But they're the most important fans. They're the first ones through the gate. Now, there are like 50 of them. There needs to be 150, right? And then because they also set the tone from a game presentation standpoint. Because we've all been to events where there's a rowdy section and they're all up and they're chanting defense or they're rhythmic clapping. But we're not going to stand up if no one else is doing it. We're not going to do it ourselves. We're not going to start chanting. Everyone would look at us like we're crazy. But if you already got a crazy group being crazy, then it's okay to be crazy. But if you don't, then you're just crazy, right? You're the one guy standing up and doing it, and everyone's looking at you like, what's going on with that guy? So, hugely important, these fan groups. And we've seen it manifest itself in MLS, where it's a competition, who can dress up the craziest and who can be the loudest, and which sets the tone of the atmosphere in the venue.
I appreciate your time. Just last one, look, are you having fun? Because I've got to imagine that, it's a seminal moment to scribe your name and see it on that ball and know that that's going to go out to kids across the country. When you figure out that your job title is going to be commissioner, I got to imagine that was something you look forward to. Are you having fun doing this? Your ball's on a name. Your name's on a ball now, George.
My name on the ball is the single best thing about this job. Because, man, I saw it with David Stern. I saw it with, Roger Goodell. I'm like, that is cool. So that's the single best thing of this job. The answer is, yeah. It's like everything else in life. There are good days and bad days. It's a hard job. When Mark was first kind of pushing me towards this, and then I took it, he then called me and told me the 5 reasons why I'm going to be a terrible commissioner. Because I'm kind of more of a pleaser and more of a sales and marketing spin. And most commissioners are just kind of cold and attorneys. And, but, it's interesting you said it. The chairman of our board of our owners is a guy named Eric Anderson. He's the owner of the New England Free Jacks. And, we have a board call once a month, and it happened to be yesterday. 2 hours of just really, there's a lot of big issues going on, right, with COVID and things. And, the fun piece has really been pushed to the back, right? In all of life, basically, not just Major League Rugby, not just sports, but like, we can all think about things we did over a year ago to have fun that we're not doing today. And so at the end of our call yesterday, Eric said, guys, let's remember we're in this to have fun, so let's try to get back to that. And I think we will once, we kick off and we get welcome fans back into our stadiums. And it's going to be a very fun job. But like most people's jobs these days, I don't think that they really describe it as fun. There's a lot of grinding going on in the world. And I'm definitely fall in that category as well. But, the day that like the Rhino guy sent me the ball, I got to be very honest with you. I'm like, that's cool. So I took a picture and sent it to my kids. They're like, they thought it was the coolest thing ever. They're like, wow, but anyway, it's all good. You can't, if you work in this business, you've got to make yourself have fun. If you're not having fun, you got to get out of this business. There is no question about that. And working with Mark Cuban for 20 years, there were hard days. We had hard conversations. There are days that you swallow hard when you work for a billionaire like Mark, who has really high expectations. But then you win a championship or you lose a championship. I did both, in the finals. And this is a very high highs and low career. It is. If you choose to be in this, you're going to have high highs and you're going to have low lows. The key is try to stay in the center for the most of the time and you don't burn yourself out one way or the other. So, all in all, I'm really pleased and honored to be here. The opportunity to have an impact on a sport that is not mainstream in North America does not go lightly with me. Like if we can actually make progress here and grow rugby in North America and become a respected league like the traditional leagues are, then like having something like that and seeing that to completion or on its way to completion, there's no better high, right? There's no better high. It's no different. We were talking off camera about indoor soccer. That was just, nobody cared about indoor soccer, but we did some amazing things in indoor soccer. We sold out facilities in indoor soccer. I would tell the story all the time. We'd have the most important CEO in the city sitting in the upper deck with his kids' soccer team, right? Attending our events. So, the opportunity to get rugby on a path to be mainstream in North America is an awesome opportunity. And I'm humbled, to lead this league at this point.
Well, you've definitely been through some of the dark days through COVID, there's no doubt. And I'm sure that the highs, when you're sitting there with an ice cold Giltini, assuming it's a cold drink, a drink you serve cold, and a hot dog in your hand at the Coliseum, I have no doubt that it'll have all paid off at that moment.
Well, ask me on August the 1st. If on August the 1st, I am somewhere and the champion of the Western Conference is playing the champion of the Eastern Conference in the Major League Rugby final live on CBS Sports, not CBS Sports Network, but live on CBS in prime time, I will consider it a successful year.
Fantastic. Well, George, from all of American rugby, the grassroots rugby grunts, we are very thankful and grateful and lucky to have Major League Rugby, and Major League Rugby is very lucky and should be very thankful and grateful to have you, and we're grateful for your time today. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Anytime.